Hey everybody, Mark from the future here. I did forget to film an intro to this video. So, what you're about to see, we are going to tear the transmission out of the car. You saw a little bit of that last week, link to that video right here. Then we are going to remove the overdrive and kind of assess the situation. So if you like seeing some nasty sludge in the bottom of an old overdrive, stick around. Alright, so there's our offending transmission out of the car. Kind of rough fitting it out, but we managed to get it out. There's the empty hole where it once was. You can kind of see the clutch and flywheel down there. Those we actually replaced a few years ago when we were first starting this project, so we know those are good. So now I guess it's time to start tearing into this, take a look at what seals we need to buy, and then we'll probably have to pick it up again next week once we get the right seals and everything coming. So what do we suspect is leaking?
What we're seeing, here's the transmission. The actual overdrive starts right here. The oil from the transmission also feeds the overdrive unit. And now that we've got it on the bench, we can say that it's leaking in the gasket between the trans and the overdrive. It also looks like there's a leak on the gasket on this brass cap underneath the overdrive unit. And for sure there's a leak on the rear housing of the overdrive unit. So Mark and I feel that the best thing to do is to pull the overdrive unit off the trans, go through it, and go through these seals. Because who knows the last time this thing was ever apart, when seals were replaced, yada yada. Go through it, check it out, seal it up, get it back in the car. And by the way, taking this out of the car is a two-man job, there's no doubt about it. We've got some work ahead. We're going to go through this, get everything checked out, button it up so we don't have the Exxon Valdez under there anymore.
First step to getting this thing taken apart here. So you got 6 bolts that hold the overdrive to the main transmission. 4 are short here, and then there's long ones here. So what you do is you take the short ones out and then slowly loosen the long one, so that the springs in here can kind of uncompress themselves without just flying off. We're not sure at this time if you have to take the shifter linkage off to get the piece out, but we'll find out shortly. Now it's just sitting on top of here. We should be able to just lift it off now. Yeah, so it looks like last time there wasn't a gasket actually installed on here, just some form of gasket or silicone or something was put on there to try to seal it up, and obviously that has not held up well over time, so we won't be doing that again. So moving down, the next step, there's this adapter plate that goes between the transmission and the overdrive, and you can see that the same the same sealant was used here to seal that plate on. And this is actually more concerning. All these, there are a few kind of passageways here. I'm assuming that's how the oil gets from the main transmission into the overdrive, and those were all plugged up with this goop that just kind of went everywhere. So again, good case for, yeah, there's a plug-sized piece of goop that came out of that hole right there. So yeah, again, make sure you guys are buying the right gaskets when you put things back together, because this kind of shows you what can happen if you don't. So moving on to our overdrive unit here. Yeah, there is actually quite a bit of old sludge down in here. I assume old pieces of brass bushings and things like that. So we will be going through, checking some tolerances and making sure everything looks good on this before we put it back together. All right, so no turning back now. We're diving in deeper. We're going to take off this plate over here because that gasket, surprise, also leaking. And eventually, yeah, we're getting in pretty deep here. We also need to take this rear half off and replace the gasket on there because, you know, we're not doing this again. So we're going all the way. Could be interesting getting all this back together.
Somebody had a weak moment. They used a gasket.
Still leaks. Okay, so we got the two halves of the casing apart. You can kind of start to see how this thing works. Basically, you got a planetary gear set in here that engages and disengages with a clutch that's operated with oil pressure that's created by this pump assembly that's in here. So important parts are kind of the making sure that pump gets up to pressure and making sure all the clearances on these gears and things are all good. So we'll be checking all of that. We did have a slight leak between this ring and the rear housing, but we probably should have looked into this a little bit more. According to the manual, there isn't supposed to be any kind of sealant or gasket in that location, so I'm not really sure how that seals up, but yeah, more research might be required there. Well, that's about as far as I think we're gonna take it. We're gonna buy our gaskets this week, and then we'll work on putting everything back together, probably check some of these float clearances, at least the ones we can. Yeah, get everything cleaned up. Like you said, there's a lot of sludge in here that we definitely want to take care of, so we'll be addressing that and putting her back together. So that's going to do it for today. Like I said, we're going to get the gaskets and everything we need on order, and then next week put everything back together and hopefully get it all back in the car. So we've only lost a couple weeks of time on this little setback, but yeah, thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, drop a comment if you have any helpful advice or anything for us. We love hearing from you. We'll see you next time.